Right, my name's Kendra Houseman, and these interviews are for Blondy's people. People that I admire now, but also people that if they'd been there for Blondie as a child, that life would have been very different. This is going to be quite a serious one, and I'm going to put a trigger warning from now. If you don't want to watch it, you don't. If you do, we're going to go on a bit of a journey. So, who are you and what do you do?
Hello, Kendra. My name is Rachel Bell. I am a feminist and a radical feminist because of the porn industry and the levels of rape. That's made me a radical feminist. I am a mum of 2 boys. I'm a modern slavery support worker, so I look after very young women who have been used as rape slaves. And I'm a campaigner to raise awareness about the harm of porn and the sex industry. So that includes lap dancing clubs, strip clubs, and the sex trade. So yeah, I'm going to talk about porn because they're all linked and it's a massive, massive industry, bigger than Hollywood.
Absolutely. And the sexualization of girls is so underrated, and it's so, like, we met at Philia and we met at that conference and we saw some of the stuff that was said, and you knew about it and I didn't. And think I walked into that conference aged about 38 at the time and didn't know a lot of stuff. So anyone who watches this video from this point onwards, they may not know this stuff and it might shock them, but it needs to be out there, doesn't it?
It really does, because, you know, sexualization of girls starts, you could say, before they're born, you know, with the colour pink. And we're even getting girls as young as 5 or 6 saying they want to be thinner. It causes massive mental health issues. The whole culture is saturated with these images of girls looking hot, looking sexy, and everywhere a girl looks, they get the message that your value is tied up with how hot you are.
Absolutely.
And there was a fantastic study by the American Psychological Association in about 2007, and it found that sexualization harms even academic performance because girls are just so obsessed with their appearance and body image and this sort of self-consciousness that, yeah, it even harms their place in the world. And that obviously has got increasingly pornified, the whole sexualization. So we now have a porn industry where we have real trafficked minors, we have user-generated content. Most of Pornhub, the world's biggest porn site, where a 9 or 10-year-old boy will go if he wants to learn about sex these days, that is full of user-generated content, and a lot of it is children. Yep. So yeah, sexualization of children is a massive problem in the popular culture and in the recognised porn industry where kids are being exploited.
We're going to go through the questions and we're going to talk about porn. And the reason you're here, and I always like to explain people why they've been chosen so other people understand, is I've admired you since we met. The stuff that you talk about was like, whoa, this woman is so passionate and knows what she's talking about. So you're somebody that I like to work alongside. I look at your stuff and I use it in my work. But also, if you'd been around when I was younger, my sexual exploitation, it wouldn't have happened, we can't say that, but I would have understood more what was happening to me. I had no concept that this stuff wasn't okay. As a child, I remember being 13 and grown men thinking it's appropriate to talk to me in a very sexual manner. Yeah. And you could see that I was 13. So that's why you're here. You're here to show what can happen. Okay. You wrote me a blog, a blog that blew people's heads. Everyone loved it. And you wrote me a blog with a checklist of what a healthy relationship looks like for girls and for women. So what does that checklist look like? Not the list of it. What does it look like? What does it mean? And why is it important for us as women to have this healthy relationship checklist?
It's important to really be really clear with girls and boys about what is healthy, because the culture is just riddled with messages that are telling them that to get respect, boys need to be violent. To get value, girls need to be available and be hot and put their own desires and sexual pleasure second. And I think it's devastating for a lot of girls. You know, they are sexual beings. They want to have fun. They want to have a good time. They want to meet some nice guys. Of course, you know, that's how it is for many, many girls. I'm talking about straight girls in that particular part. But it's devastating when you find out that there aren't many good guys out there, and guys are going to try it on. Lad culture has played a big part, where guys are learning to be persistent, to be more of a man. You know, we've got pop videos, rap videos like AO Technology with schoolgirls in a strip club. We've got even your squeaky clean pop has got Katy Perry, you know, pole dancing, Kylie pole dancing. We've got Grand Theft Auto, where they're killing prostitutes and using women. So that's all backed up, all these messages everywhere. So there's not much telling young girls what actually is healthy, and that settling for second best isn't the way to go. And they don't learn about feminism in most schools. No. And it's feminism that helped me stand up and say, actually, you know, when push comes to shove, you know, I can survive on my own, and you've got to be able to be on your own. You've got to be able to, you know, be able to sort of stand up to life and all the shit on your own and not rely on a man. It's great if you can find a partner, but you know, a lot of girls don't realise they need to sort of be able to stand up by themselves and be alone, and their own interests are important rather than their appearance. So that's where the checklist came from. Yeah. And now we've got things like 365 days. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm really worried about his message about girls want to be kidnapped, and this is sending really confusing.
Like my head, yeah.
Yeah. I know a mum of a teenage boy. He came home and said, "What the fuck? I thought girls wanted respect. I've got girls telling me they want to be kidnapped now." You know.
Yeah. And let's be clear, when we're talking now, we're not anti-men. We're pro-women. We're not anti what men are doing. It's about what women should be doing and what they need to be doing, because people get very confused by that. You know, a health and relation checklist isn't about being anti anyone. It's about you embracing and for yourself, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, young people are under massive pressure to accept porn and the pornified culture, or risk being seen as anti-sex or anti-fun. And, you know, feminism has suffered all this taboo for being anti-men. Of course it isn't. It's actually very pro the human and equality. So the checklist it's about helping girls and women recognise what they want is important, that they get to choose, they don't wait to be chosen, and to recognise that, you know, porn has played such a massive part in sexual relationships, with the normalisation of anal sex, and a lot of practices that are very degrading. So we're now in a situation where many girls are saying, if he doesn't slap, hit me or choke me, he's not a real man. And it's not okay to accept that. You don't have to accept that, and you can ask for things that, you know, give you pleasure. But it's also about outside the bedroom. You know, it's about a guy recognizing you need time on your own to fulfill your own dreams, to see your friends, that life's stressful, you got to study. And a lot of men, the porn industry in particular, is grooming men to be, you know, very demanding and pushy, and get what they want now, you know. So yeah, I'm hoping the checklist just helps girls and women reevaluate, and still, you know, everyone wants to have a good time. I want young women and young men to have really hot, enjoyable sex and sexual adventures that is safe and doesn't leave them feeling really shitty afterwards, you know.
And it's interesting you talk about young people. I do the sexual health at where I work, and one of the first things that ever happened when I sort of become popular and the kids realised they could come to me, one of my boys come to me and said to me, "Miss, there's something wrong with me. When I have sex with my girlfriend, she doesn't squirt." And I was like, "What?" And he talked about what he'd seen in porn, and I said, no. And I had to sit with him. We had it was a, you know, for him an embarrassing conversation. But afterwards he said, "Oh, miss, I had to keep watching porn to see what I was doing wrong." And it really hit me that this young boy, who was a sensible boy, who was very bright. He honestly was watching porn to find out how to have sex. And so I bring you to my next question: consent. Okay, so consent for me as a young person, I never taught what consent was. I didn't know what consent was until I'd hit 19, 20. And I have a big problem with children in my that I work with, and children that I know that don't know what consent is. So why is it important to you? Do you think that consent is taught in the classroom?
You're right. A lot of people still today only associate consent with, oh, it's 16, that's the age of consent. You know, it's not talked about, is it? It's important in the classroom because schools are a big site for sexism and sexual bullying, just like the workplace and the street. It's no different. Teachers haven't been given the tools or the structures to deal with it if a girl's saying, I've been called a slag. And all this name calling is so normalised now, it just goes unremarked, doesn't it?
Banter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's girl to girl, isn't it? You know, this sort of sexist slur, you know, you slag or we whore, whatever. And music culture has totally normalised the language, you know, ho, all of that. But schools need structures and systems in place. So a girl, because it is normally girls that suffer sexual harassment, they can go and report and know that it will be taken seriously. Consent can be taught in the classroom from primary age with stuff around body ownership and helping kids understand it's their body. Everyone has different boundaries. Someone doesn't like hugs, some people do. You don't have to give your, you know, auntie or uncle a kiss goodbye, but they'd like it, but it's up to you. So kids really need to know they own their own bodies.
Yeah.
And going back to the question, why it's so important in the classroom, because girls are suffering a lot of sexual harassment on all levels in their school and college lives. And we know that from the inquiry, the MP's inquiry into sexual violence in schools, I think it was in 2015, which has led to this new revised sex and relationships education that is coming through, where consent was supposed to have a big stress. But yeah, with pornography and the popular culture telling boys to be pushy, with lad culture telling boys, you know, to keep going, to be violent, they need to know that they should accept no and, you know, suck it up. And also consent needs to be asked for again and again. You know, if you have sex on a Friday, you still got to ask for the consent the next Saturday night or whatever, you know. So it's lots of things like this. And also, you know, alcohol and dress. We know public attitudes are terribly sexist. From the Forset Society, they did this big survey. About a third of the British public think that a girl's asking for it if she had a drink or was dressed. You know, it's not the skirt.
What was she wearing? You know, we have people that ask them questions when a rape is reported. They ask things like, well, what was you wearing? Like, who gives a fuck about what I was wearing? No one cares. Yeah,
or what you were drinking. You know, I mean, if someone's passed out or can't, you know, talk coherently or can't give a really enthusiastic I'm up for it, you know, it's looking for that enthusiasm, just don't go there, you know, leave it, wait. So that's why it's important in the classroom, because harassment is happening on the school site and it hasn't been addressed because schools just haven't had the tools to deal with it. They haven't got the systems in place. There's a lot of work needs to be done, but I haven't seen the new RSE curriculum, but I know that a lot of teachers don't want to go there.
Or haven't been trained how to deal with it at all,
And then the other really worrying thing is a lot of sex ed providers, these independent people that come in, some of them are just giving porn a free pass and calling it fantasy, or not even encouraging kids to question it. So I think schools need to be really careful with reviewing their RSE providers who can explain why porn is not fantasy. It's mostly user-generated content full of real crimes uploaded. So we're talking about porn a lot because porn teaches kids boys to just give the finger to consent.
Yeah,
You know, it's like,
some of the, I mean, when I spoke to Fiona Broadfoot about porn, and we talked about some of the titles, and you know, some of these titles are girls screaming for her life. You know, when they go into Pornhub, you know, a schoolgirl beaten. Like these are, this is just so degrading and damaging and dangerous that we have to talk about it, about porn. Tell me about Schoolgirls Wanted. This makes me, but just tell me, go on. So tell me about Schoolgirls Wanted.
so I wrote a blog post called Schoolgirls Wanted. Part of my role with not buying it is we did a campaign against the Sport newspaper. The Sport, this is going off tangent a bit, but the Sport popularised upskirting.
Really?
They used to have a dwarf photographer, a dwarf who would take pictures of women's upskirt and they'd put it on the front page, and that was the front page of a newspaper. So, and then if you looked inside the Sport, you know, it was pretty much wall to wall soft porn, but they'd have a whole page of videos of sort of school uniform babes, you know, schoolgirl porn. And schoolgirl and teen are massive categories on Pornhub. And then when you look at prostitution, there's a really memorable quote from Rachel Moran, who wrote Paid For, about her own experience of being prostituted as a child from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was a teenager when she was pimped on the streets as a homeless girl. But she said, I worked in a brothel, and the most common question when I was on the phones was, what is the youngest girl you've got? Or that sort of words to that effect. So there's, you know, we know about what's going on in Asia with the whole sexualization of the schoolgirl. That's been going on a long time. But yeah, so I wrote Schoolgirls Wanted because of the whole sexualization of the child. And I did have some notes about some of the titles.
Do you like these men, because I've seen it, it's happened to me, but I've seen it, these men who are shouting out their car windows, their van windows, which I've seen, oh, all right, babe, to girls in their school uniform. Do they realise they're paedophiles?
I don't think they do they? I mean, it's so...
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
they are. I think that if you're sexually attracted as a grown adult to a child in a school uniform, and they are a child in a school uniform, they're in school, and you call out. I told a man last year, I went and knocked on his window at traffic lights. I said, did you know you're a paedophile? And he just went white. And I said, I just wanted you to know that.
Good for you, yeah.
Because I don't think they realise that it's not acceptable.
I don't think they do they? And I think...
Or do they?
Yeah. I think they just think it's their right and it's a free-for-all and they can say what they want. But no, I don't think they're possibly, you know, watching Pornhub and it's so normalised. And worryingly, you know, you get girls on Pornhub who might be 12 and they're made to look even younger as well, with the pigtails in the pink bedroom. But then there are real abuse victims and real rape victims who are, you know, primary school age as well on Pornhub.
How do you think that is not acceptable? Because it's not acceptable, but how is this out there? Like, why is this not more policed? If there's out there, there is real victims on there, which we know there is, because we know there is. Why do you think that it's just being ignored? We live in a
patriarchal society. We've got, you know, men in positions of power. The government tried to push age verification through.
Okay.
We're going to have this groundbreaking age verification in the UK to prevent minors from accessing pornography. It's been stalled so many times, and actually this Monday UK Feminista are doing a webinar on age verification, and they've got speakers including the NSPCC coming in to ask what the hell happened to age verification. You know, Pornhub has since continued to balloon, and we've now got this global petition recognising the trafficking that's inherent in Pornhub. There's a petition to shut it down. So there's a lot more awareness since age verification first got mooted. But yeah, what happened to that? We need that. And it's just insane that everything is, you know, broadcasting has ratings, but you can go on Pornhub and look at things that wouldn't even get an 18 rating, you know, and are real crimes uploaded.
It's just shocking. And anyone watching this, if they didn't know that, I wonder how people now feel, because that's just out there, being allowed to be out there, and the damage that, imagine a child learning about sex or whatever they're doing, they access that, they're also going to suffer secondary trauma because they're watching somebody else's abuse. That's the fact of it.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, some of these sex ed providers that are saying porn is fantasy, you know, it is really damaging, because kids need to know there's no blame or shame on them. It's incredibly addictive, and the Reward Foundation do amazing work on talking about the science of addiction.
Yeah.
But actually, you know, as a consumer, you are complicit. You're enabling it if you're watching it. Yeah. And like I said, we don't want to put blame or shame on young people. It's the porn industry that needs to be held accountable, and needs to be held accountable when we're seeing these sex crimes against kids and women,
yeah,
where it's obvious that they've been, you know, they mirror acts that are on pornography.
What would you say if somebody was watching this, or somebody will challenge us, because we will get challenged, and say, but how does porn harm? How does it harm? So what would your answer to that? What is the harm of porn?
There are so many ways porn harms. There's a lot of meta studies on how consumers of porn, even just generally sexually objectified images, if you consume a lot of that, you buy into rape myths a lot more. So you'll buy into she's asking for it, you know, she's acting slutty. You're less likely to support equality or women's advancement. You're more likely to get engaged in risky behaviours. So there's loads of studies on that, and there's loads of studies about well, there was a great one on BBC Radio 5 Live that showed that something like a third of all women under 40 reported being slapped, choked, or spat at or gagged in sex that they thought was consensual. So there are plenty of statistics out there of the harm. A huge proportion of schoolgirls aged 14 to 17 report unwanted being coerced into sex acts. We're seeing loads more girls going to GPs with anal injuries because the porn industry has totally normalised anal sex, and even more depraved acts like ass to mouth that just serve to deprave and despoil. But sometimes people listen up when they hear about the harm to boys and men. I've got boys. There's no way the porn industry is going to steal their souls, you know. But it leads to erectile dysfunction now. We're seeing a lot more of that. Yeah. And ultimately, loss of empathy, lack of control over one's life, because addiction happens quite quickly. It leads to more deviance, because we see the way the porn industry works. It you know, it pulls boys in, and they get more interested. They get desensitized, I guess, and get more interested. So in things like in paedophilia, even. I think at the start of lockdown, Simon Bailey, who's the lead on child protection in the police, I think that's his title, he reported a new emerging group of paedophiles who are aged 18 to 26. They're using a lot of, they're going on porn, they've been porn users for a while, they've got desensitized, and now they're looking for child porn. So, so we're getting quite young male adults emerging as paedophiles now.
But maybe not see this, but we're back to the point is, do they see themselves as paedophiles? No, because the porn industry has made sex with schoolgirls normal. So they don't. Yeah. They may not see it. They may, but they may not, because they've already been exposed to it daily.
Yeah. The porn industry does so much harm to men. It hates men as well. You know, we've got a lot of, another form of harm is, breakdown of relationships and the family, men addicted to porn, and there's this, kids are ending up with no family, no dads. And then porn actors are speaking out about the damage to them. Even Jenna Jameson is on Twitter saying, let's shut down Pornhub now. Porn actresses, their lifespan's about, not lifespan, their career span is about 3 years. They're more likely to die prematurely. Brie Olson is another one who spoke out in a really famous article by Tom Farr. So Brie Olson was a porn actress.
Okay.
And she said, you know what, I just want to be seen like every other, like a normal woman, like someone like a nurse. But everyone I see, looks at me like I'm a slut, and I get slut shamed all the time because she can never take down those images of her when she, spent some time in pornography. So there's loads of people within the industry talking about the harm and how it really targets really young, vulnerable women who might not speak English from poorer countries. It really targets the younger ones. That's been documented quite well in Pimp State by Kat Banyard. So, these young girls who might be forced to sign agreements to agree to harder and harder acts, or they say, we've got all the set, we'll sue you if you won't work again if you don't do this.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of dissenting voices now, but unfortunately there's still a movement of ethical porn producers who, will continue to try and push for
whatever they want. The sexual exploitation of women has gone on a lifetime. It has. And I've had to work with girls and boys, but we're going to talk about girls that have said, I had to sleep with him, miss, because he'd given me free weed. And I remember this one girl that I worked with, and she didn't know that she could say no. So I've done a lot of work with her, me and the person I work with. And I said to her, even if you do this, this and that, even if you're naked in the bed, you can say no. And she laughed, and she was not from England. And she said, miss, you can't, you can't just say no. Once we educated her, this girl went on to disclose a series of abuse that had taken place. Because once she realised that she had an option, she said, well, actually, I've got 40 boys that I need to report them, miss, and that's the danger. That's the danger. Yeah. If you don't know, I did not know what consent was. I did not have a clue. I knew what was happening to me was wrong, but I didn't know that consent was an option. And many people do go with that whole consent at 16. That's what they're talking about. So it's just scary to think about the harm that comes from porn, and people don't even realise it. Do you think
it's
is there a link between porn and violence against women?
There absolutely is.
Okay.
Porn is violence against women. It's real, like, there's that argument. Well, it's not, it's a fact.
It's a fact, yeah.
It's, there's just out of the air, there's a genre called, on public transport. So there'll be men jizzing on women's clothing, or doing, or groping them on tubes, on buses. That's a whole genre, and that's getting uploaded, and these women will be re-traumatized again and again. So it's riddled with user-generated content that is actual sexually violent.
Yeah.
And then absolutely it does create inequality and fuels violent crime beyond the porn. It's not, I won't call it a porn set, because most this handmade porn, it's user generated, so the porn set is just one,
the bedroom or something,
part of it now. But we look at the rape crisis on a global level, but in the UK, we've got shocking figures and really low convictions. We've got intimate partner violence that's happening with really young people, from that 16 to 24 group that are at real risk of intimate partner violence, where there's massive confusion around consent. So absolutely, it does lead to increased violence against women. And you just look at the attitudes that porn fosters. I think you mentioned the word unwanted. Things like unwanted, frightened, scared, coerced. These are the words that you see in the porn titles. And yeah, we just have to look at the rates of domestic violence as well. You know, women's bodies are, you know, seen as so throwaway, and that's the message that porn is selling.
What do you think needs to change? What needs to change to keep our young people safe and educated? What needs to be different?
We need something like a massive public awareness campaign, a national public awareness campaign about porn not being fantasy, about what it really is. And that petition to shut down Pornhub is doing a lot in that respect, showing that it's actually trafficking. A lot of trafficking is happening. We need age verification, you know, where MindGeek isn't involved. I think when the government have tried to talk about age verification, they talked about involving MindGeek, who is the parent company of Pornhub.
Oh, really?
And if not, you know, if we say about 90% of pornography is violent and aggressive towards women, you know, we basically need to get rid of most of it.
Yeah.
I would just say shut the whole industry down myself. So yeah, age verification needs to come in. But then with age verification, you know, we're saying, oh, it's not okay for kids, but it's all right for the rest of us to watch kids and women being tortured, strangled, electrocuted, choked, and crying with pain, you know. So I think actually calling time on the production of pornography, you know, also needs to happen. And then getting educators, sex and relationships educators into schools and youth centres or anywhere where young people are. And with parents, you know, Culture Reframed have got an amazing free parents programme.
Really?
For tweens, as they call them, and teens. Just to have those uncomfortable conversations with your kid before the porn industry reaches them, you know. So, and I think the government could do more on research into pornography and its influence on girls' mental health and poor body image and body hatred.
Yeah.
We're seeing girls so dissatisfied with their bodies
that
they even don't want to be a girl anymore, you know. They're cutting themselves, correcting themselves. We've got labiaplasty on the rise.
Yeah.
We need research into how porn is impacting on this terrible, terrible crisis in mental health. I know boys are in crisis as well.
Yeah.
And I think, what else? It's just really talking about addiction, how it's Culture Reframe call it the public health crisis of the digital age. It's so addictive, and understanding that addiction without any blame or shame.
Yeah. For me, I think that parents need to be more educated, because if parents really knew, if parents really understood what was going on, the likelihood of them talking to their children, yes, it can be uncomfortable, whatever, but I think parents or adults really know what their children are accessing, rather than just going, oh, he's been watching porn. No, that's not what's happened. You know, your 14-year-old son hasn't been watching porn, he's just been witnessing rape and abuse, and therefore parents should be held accountable if their children are accessing this kind of stuff and they're not doing nothing about it, is my point.
Yeah, they need the tools to be able to talk to kids before the porn industry gets them. Yeah. We didn't talk about that peer-on-peer abuse that's happening at primary level as well. And this, you know, incest porn is a massive abuse category.
Is it?
With titles like, it is upsetting, but titles like First Time with Daddy, Stepdaughter, you know, Gets It,
you
know, all this sort of thing. And, you know, we've had in the press cases of brothers attacking sisters, you know, or this interfamily abuse happening with quite young peers. So yeah, it's a crisis, and it's terrorism against girls and women, and I cannot fathom why people aren't talking. People don't want to know about it, I think, is a lot of the thing with a lot of parents, or they think it's just some explicit material, you know. but it is extreme torture of the most sickening, sadist kind. And unfortunately, you know, I don't enjoy thinking about pornography at all. It's upsetting. You can't unsee things. And there's a researcher called Susan Black who's done amazing research. She's actually spoken to police about how porn is impacting on men's violence and behaviours and attitudes. But I would approach her she's a surrealist artist as well, but I'd approach her website with extreme caution because it can be extremely upsetting. But she documents how sex crimes mirror what is in pornography.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And she's but there are also some really, really upsetting categories, you know, that you just wouldn't fathom, like cancer, disability.
Yeah.
You know,
but they're there, aren't they? Whether, you know, we're sitting there and anyone watching this, their mind's going to the darkest place, and you're thinking, oh God, our children, not your children, but whoever's watching this, their children, they could be accessing that because there is no age restriction, so they could be up watching this stuff that is so distressing to us as adults to have to think about. They're watching it.
Yeah, and that's so traumatizing, and not having parents that can help you through that, or anyone, is really upsetting. It's so traumatizing when you're just looking to find out, you know, curiosity about boobs or something, you know, if you're 9 or something. I mean, sex ed experts, some of them say talk to boys as young as 9 and 10, you know.
I did my children. I spoke to them. I spoke to all my children, the boys, quite young. Consent for my sons was something I spoke about well young, really, really young. And my daughter is a bit different. She's been diagnosed with autism. So I spoke to her for a long time. I told her that it was her body and nobody could do this or that. So she's chosen now. She chooses whether she has her photo taken or not, which causes problems. But I give her that much of control over her body because that's what she wants to know. If she doesn't want her photo taken, she don't get her photo taken. That's that.
Yeah, it's so important, the power of no. Girls need to know they can say no, and you don't have to be all nice and polite and kind all the time. If you don't want it, that's fine, you know. Yeah, that's so important. And I think parents worry that, oh, we mustn't talk about that, it's not age appropriate, you know. But you can teach body ownership like you've done. And with my boys, I haven't said the P word yet, but I've coached them in gender stereotypes, sex stereotypes, I'll say, so much, you know, so that now they'll say things like, Mummy, there's only one girl in Angry Birds and she's pink, can you believe it, you know. And they'll say, you know, why is Anna Friel kissing Will Ferrell, you know, sorry, they only know the actors' names, but like, she's so much younger than him, and why is that old man kissing her? And, you know, they pick up on sexism and sexualization a lot.
My daughter come home and she was disgusted because at her school you could join the football team or you could join the girls' football team, and she was enraged. She was like, why is it not boys football and girls football? Why is it even separate? But when we talked about that, and she still can't get over that, she said, well, how comes they've got football and I've got girls football? So it is about, that's why I say the power of the parent. We're empowering our children. If everyone done that, we change a generation.
Yeah, schools have got, it's, unless there's someone in the school that really gets it, you know, some schools don't have that person, it can be just one person. But certainly with my son's school, I had to question, why are you putting the girls and boys in different queues, you know, why are you lining them up separately? We need to let kids know that they're all human, and that this girl as the other is you know. And boys have all this shit about you, that's so gay, you know, you're a girl because you're wearing an orange t-shirt, you know. They get a tough time of it as well with gender stereotypes. But I think parents can talk about stereotypes and the pressures on girls, and they can talk about the pressures on boys, and they can talk about all of that whether you've got a boy or a girl. So I'll talk to my boys about their own changing bodies and the girls' changing body as well, you know. And
what would you say for my last question? Anyone out there who's interested, they've watched this now and they're like, bloody hell, I don't even know where to start with all the stuff we talked about. Where would be good places for them to start accessing, to look, to try and make these changes or get involved?
certainly if you're a parent, you know, go to Culture Reframed, or a teacher or an educator or a youth mentor, or working with young people. Culture Reframed have those free online programs for both preteen and teenagers.
Okay.
Help parents have those uncomfortable conversations. Not buying it, where I'm a trustee, you know, we join the dots between this and the sex industry, you know, because it's not just porn. Girls are growing up thinking, I could be a sex worker, and they're not so many, you know, and Instagram and OnlyFans, all this, and reality TV shows, you know, they're thinking I can sell my body, and it's all very it's sugar daddy thing, you know, it's all like, they think it's not prostitution, you know. Prostitution is being sold as glamorous in these roundabout ways by calling it escort, or, you know, hanging out with a sugar daddy, whatever. So there's that whole thing as well. Where can they go? They can get people into parents can get people into the schools, or sort of really encourage their schools to get speakers in. There's a guy called Michael Conroy from Men at Work, who talks about boys, and when you talk to boys, you know, it's stuff that there's a lot of humor. I think they respond to humor. So he says things like, you know, your dick doesn't need to keep going, you know, like, imagine there's a pack of wolves or like a scary dad coming in the room, you're going to stop then, aren't you? You don't know. Some girls are sort of led to believe that, you know, the boy you can't just withdraw, you know, but of course you can, you know. So Men at Work.
Do you think that people should be educating themselves about feminism to understand why porn is so harmful?
Absolutely, yeah. Feminism is important to help girls know that they have rights, and that they can say no, and that what their desires matter. Things like their own sexual pleasure, you know, it's not part of pornography. It's, you know, the female orgasm isn't really in the mainstream porn, you know.
It's about the man, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, UK Feminista, who are running this webinar on age verification, they used to do fantastic work in schools.
Yeah.
They used to come and run workshops on gender stereotypes and sexism, pressures on boys' body image as well. I'm not sure how much they're doing that at the moment, but there are certainly plenty of groups out there that are going into schools.
The fact is that if anyone has watched this and they want to research or find out, then you start asking the questions and you start looking. We can't ignore this anymore, and this is why we're making this video. People need to understand that our children, not just boys or girls, they're being sexualized from such a young age, and it's not okay.
That's right. And it's about the, you know, not to sound too grand, it's about the end of empathy. You know, the rates of intimate partner abuse from teenagers to, you know, more established relationships, it's staggering. And porn is playing a part in these attitudes. It's playing a massive part. You know, we can't have Me Too without dismantling the porn industry, you know, everything.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's I'm always happy to talk to schools in my area.
Well, I'll include your Twitter and everything. As we're talking now, it will, on the video, be running along. So if anyone wants to ask more questions, I'm sending them your way, Rachel. So it's too late now. They're all coming to you. Well, thank you for talking, because I think it's really important that we talk about it, and that's why there's a trigger warning and it needed to be said. But I think you said it very well. Have you enjoyed your interview?
Thank you, and let's hope age verification does come through soon. And certainly there's a growing movement to resist porn. But yeah, it's about helping kids resist it and recognize it's not anti-sex, it's not anti-fun. You know, it's about letting human relationships sort of win, really.
Yeah.
It's hijacking their sexualities. I think that's important to recognise.
We need to safeguard our children so they don't go on to harm others.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Good night, everyone.
See, it's been a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you.